Welcome to Talk Art, a program by SOLA, the Society of Local Artists, here in the Bay Area. Today, we're talking with Jill Andre and Werner Glinke. Glinke, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Did I say Glinke?
Glinke is
Glinke,
fine.
okay, Werner Glinke. And they brought a couple pieces of their art here with us today, and we also have a couple pieces of art that we're going to show on camera later on. So first, before we start talking about art in general, because we've got lots of things we want to talk about, studios and figure drawing and all sorts of other stuff that we do as artists. And I want to talk about the different pieces of art. Jill, would you like to talk about your piece called I Was Young Then?
I Was Younger Then.
I Was Younger Then.
This piece developed from a black and white drawing, very simple line drawing, no rendering, no color. I've been involved with a drawing group called
Talk to me.
Yeah, it's called the Drawing Circus since about '99,
Okay.
run by Edward Stanton, who you've met before.
Yeah.
We
Did
draw.
you ever meet this guy, Edward Stanton?
No, I don't.
He's going to be hopefully giving classes, these same classes at the Art League. He's supposed to be, yeah, he's getting ready to do that. So anyway, so
the Drawing Circus, we draw from models who are moving. Rarely do a still formal pose.
And they're not always nude either. Sometimes they have some weird costume on, or a partial costume. They're
And he
partially
changes
nude.
the lighting, you know, have odd props
Mm-hmm.
and music that really can influence the marks that I make. So this came from a sketch. I've had the sketch for about 4 years. And when I'm getting ready to do a show and do some painting, I go through my sketches and I'm like, oh yeah, this has something to it. And from a very simple sketch, I developed that into a painting. There are a lot of steps in between, but I used that source from 4 years ago to develop this. And this one, so it was a very simple drawing. There was no background in the drawing, just a charcoal sketch. And as I was doing it, when I use collage sometimes to develop color on the sketch. And one of the collage pieces had a map of Paris.
Oh.
And this pink area that kind of waves around, that's kind of these, I don't know what they are.
Pink areas on her.
The pink on the shirt.
Yeah.
That was based on a map of Paris.
Can you get a close-up of that? You can get a close-up of the shirt?
Yeah.
It's because that's a new thing that she started doing. It's pretty interesting. She carves into the paint, which is not that easy to do.
I use a silicone shaper.
Oh.
It's a
silicone shaper.
Yeah, it's not a brush. It's just kind of this flexible tool.
Okay.
And
Kind of
so,
like okay.
yeah. Anyway,
Like a spatula.
like a spatula. Yeah, just a shape.
Okay.
So I had an image of Paris in my mind, and this Eiffel Tower sort of appeared as
Well,
part
I
of the
noticed you
painting.
start with a circle, and so
Yeah.
since your background is in graphic arts,
Yeah.
I can see how that showed up. So,
So it was
speaking of
just-
circles, we have another circle there. Sorry,
Yeah.
are you done with that?
Yes,
So
thank
we
you.
moved on again.
Okay.
To Werner right away. So this is a lovely little piece. I just love. This used to be at the gallery.
Yes.
Jill was in the gallery that I had open in Palo Alto for many years. She was the first. She was there for the whole time. And this piece got a lot of attention. But I wasn't. We aborted the gallery and moved on to other things, including doing more of these SOLA events. So, which is really a lot of fun. There's a lot of artists that have joined SOLA. Every month we get more and more artists, and we have talks once a month on the third Thursday of the month. If anybody's interested, it starts at 6:30 and the talk begins at 7, and we do all sorts of interesting talks every month. And this is going to be a show that we do once a month also, the week following the talks we have at the Pacific Art League. So Werner, so you have a circle shape as well going on here. It seems to be the circles are one of the basic parts of life. We've got the
Enzo.
Huh?
The Enzo.
The Enzo? The Enzo.
Enzo, Japanese for circle.
Okay.
Oh, I did not know that. E-N-Z-O? Well, maybe not in Japanese. It's probably some character.
Probably something that
Probably
Looks like a circle, I bet you.
Yes, yeah.
Enzo. But, you know, we've got the seasons. Even though we've got the circle of life, we've got time. I look at this and I think of as we're coming in at the finish of something to start a cycle over again. And so, what did you call this? Did you call this something philosophical?
No, not at all. I'm very, very practically. I call it a circular object. And then there's a number attached to it, so I can distinguish actually between the different circular objects. We will see later on see one actually on on screen as well.
Okay.
So this one is just
come on
plainly-
over here, Jill. A little bit. Let the camera get in there. Come on, lean over this way. Come to me, honey. There
So
you
what
go.
you just see is a material that I use to create a circle. I've used different materials here. I choose redwood twigs, bound to
redwood twigs.
twigs, branches, bound together with brass wire. Now I did some
beautiful.
objects before. Thank you, and I tend to agree with you. So I used to
says
tie them together, and then one day I decided that using the material to show off the material as well, and actually it lends itself to very, very fine fuzz when you light the piece,
it's
right?
great. It's great. Now, and how do you attach it to the? No, what's the background? Is that canvas?
No, it's not. All of these really are mounted on quarter-inch plywood.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
When you mount things, canvas would probably distort, would cast.
You're right, because you need to have
And so
really
you-
heavy canvas
you
and a
need to
really
have
big
it-
stretcher bars.
Exactly. So
and
you need it.
crosses, yeah.
You need a firm background.
Yeah.
Also, the backgrounds that I use or that I work, they're worked with patty knives. They're multi-layer of
Yeah,
color,
I can see some red coming through
clear
the
plastic,
background.
etc. And so typically canvas would not really suit itself. It's too weak to support this.
And you use acrylic? Is that what you've got?
Typically, I use acrylic and liquid
Yeah.
plastics. Yes.
Okay, and there's a lot of texture, and that's from the liquid plastics, and you paint it. Liquid plastics, it would be like a golden media of some sort?
No.
You
They're
use-
more,
you
more
don't-
industrial type
Do you?
materials.
Okay.
Yeah, I typically use materials that are not necessarily artist
From the
materials.
art stores?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stuff I
Yeah.
find. This,
You're
for
more
example,
like Pollock. You're like you're the Pollock of industrial materials. Well, he did industrial materials, but yours using wire and wood and not
Indeed I
only
do.
paints. Indeed you do.
indeed I do.
And the plastics you use? Well, where do you get liquid plastic?
This is just the very that you typically
Oh.
use to finish floors.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they are very hard, they're very durable, and they're very
Sure
cheap.
are. Yep.
So
And when did you start painting, or not painting? When did you start creating your?
well, it was probably in the early
What do you call it? Assemblage.
assemblage,
Assemblage.
or also called assemblage for people that might.
Might
Anyway,
not want to use the French accent.
I started about in the early 70s when, as a young student, when I absolutely could not afford the art that I really would like in my apartment, and so I started to mimic Jean Miro and Alexander Calder mobiles, and
Oh yeah, very good.
I kept at it. In the meantime, I completely forgot about it. I worked in the high-tech industry until I came back to it,
Yeah.
and today it's a part-time job for me.
Yeah, that's a couple of things that we all share in common. Most artists around here came here because of the high-tech industry.
Yeah.
And eventually, you can't hide from who you really are. And even though you enjoy doing high tech, there's that part of you that's very specific and logically oriented for that, which is not very art-like for a lot of people. But the three of us are this way, and then the art just comes back. You can't hide from it. You can't run from who you really are.
gotta do it.
You got to do it.
Definition of
You
an
gotta do
artist,
it.
right?
Yep. Even I've been an artist since I was a very little girl, and as I became an adult and I had a child, and she would remind me every once in a while. This is a little teeny thing. She was 3-4 years old. She'd say, "Mommy, you're much happier when you paint or when you draw, when you do art." You're right. So anyway, I wanted to also ask you. Oh, speaking of my little girl, she's the one that made these sculptures over here. She's now not a little girl. She's all grown up and in graduate school, but she donated this to the media center. So I thought it would be appropriate to have it here because it's cool art. Runs in the family as it usually does. Your son is amazing. Jill has a 5-year-old child and son, and he is incredible.
They all are, aren't they?
They
Well,
are.
they all are.
If
No, I
you
mean,
let
but
them.
For,
Yes.
Well, but he's a very good little drawer. He creates things that you can tell what they are already, and specific, different kinds of animals already. It's amazing. So let's get back to us though. I wanted to ask you a few things. The path to art. We started talking about the path to art. I talked about a child, your own child. Your path to art, you talked about a little bit. Let's ask Jill, your path to art. When did you start realizing you were an artist? Did you always know?
I always knew it, even as a young girl in kindergarten, first grade. I did a drawing of rabbits in a carrot factory. I remember this drawing specifically, and that was the moment. Like, yeah,
That's me.
That's me.
something
I
do.
can do this. And as a young person, I continued to do that, and then got talked out of it.
I was going to ask you, did anyone say, that's not a job though, Jill? You need to have a career. That's a hobby.
You
Let's-"
can't make a living as an artist. So I channeled my creative energy into more design, which is commercial art,
Yeah.
graphic design. I studied interior design as well, and ended up doing illustration and just the gamut of doing commercial work. People would have a problem they needed solved with a drawing, and that's what I would do. And went to high tech like everybody did at one point, worked in multimedia, did animation, and it really enjoyed that. But as powerful as doing computer graphics, as powerful as that is, I mean, you have millions of colors and you can just work on it, you know, forever, and you never really have to make a commitment. This is this kind of work where there's a limit to how much you can work on it. You can only work on a painting so much, and then you kill it.
It's done.
And also there's the texture of really working with something and feeling the texture and the smell. I like the smell of art materials, but also working at this size, you have to put your whole body into it.
You didn't like the little icons?
The little things that were about this big.
You said you figured out you were getting how much per pixel?
A penny a pixel.
Penny a pixel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, did you ever work in the graphic? You didn't work in the graphic arts.
No. Actually, I have a little boutique business now where I actually do graphic for some of my clients. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades. Yeah.
Well, some of the trades around here that are popular anyway. A lot of creative people live around this area. We're, you know, in the Palo Alto area specifically. So now, how long have you known you were an artist?
Well, I'm not.
And did you get talked out of it when you were a child?
No. It was just never in my upbringing. I grew up in a very industrial area, so for me it was very clear.
What town did you grow up in?
I was growing up in Gelsenkirchen, a city that you can pronounce in Germany. Yes.
Gelsenkirchen.
Gelsenkirchen in the Ruhr Valley.
Gelsenkirchen.
And so something like this, yes. Well, a little bit of practice will get you there, though.
Okay.
So.
Werner Glinke. Okay, now I got it. Okay.
So it was just you would just have an industrial job. In my case, I became an electrician, and then I went back to college and got my electrical engineering degree, and then became a design engineer, which then provided the jump over to the pond. I worked as an engineer.
Luckily, you came here with your electrical engineering because there's a lot of work for that here, and then also it's a very creative place, and there's a lot of art clubs and a lot of art spaces, and so.
Well, there was actually a very, very specific time about 10 years ago. We moved up to Kings Mountain.
Oh.
And being in an environment like this, every day you're confronted with nature, how nature shows. And I will never forget one walk where I saw a little madrone leaf. When they fall, they're beautiful. They're discolored, they're basically dying. And the beauty in that leaf just kind of caused me to stop and say, wait a minute, I do something with this. So one of the very, very first pieces I did was called Fallen Leaf, and featured a madrone leaf in the middle, then supported by some surfaces. That's when I started. That was about 7-8 years ago.
I did want to talk about some other artwork that you brought in via electronically. Speaking of electronics, we have 3 pictures that we can bring up on the TV, and we've got 2 by you. They're both. You've got one piece shown twice. One's a larger piece.
It's a detail of
and then you've got a small. You've got another picture that's a detail, so it gets in tighter.
Yeah.
So if you can please bring that up on the screen. And the title is also called Circular Object.
Circular Object
but
711.
This is a different number, 711.
Yes,
Okay, this one's circular. The one that's on the floor here is Circular Object 5 something or other.
Yeah.
And which indicates the year.
Something like this, yeah.
So can you talk about that one a little bit? It's a different type than the ones up on the
Actually, the one that is on the screen now is made out of metal band that's used to tie up construction lumber.
Oh. Okay.
And I used some rusty wire to tie them together. The overall shape was inspired by the glass dome that is now part of the German Reichstag.
Okay.
And I made that piece specifically for an exhibition, or actually a film festival that is every year held in San Francisco at the Castro. It's called Berlin and Beyond.
Okay.
And so with a group of exhibition at the German General Consulate, everybody made a piece particular for this event. And that was the genesis of that piece.
So, okay. And the detail, you brought in a detail because the detail shows the detail of the rusty wire on the, so you just can see it. Okay.
Yeah, very, very often you see a piece and you just you can't discern
really
the individual.
You really get into it, okay.
Yeah.
And how does the rusty wire and the banding thing tie into this thing you're talking about in San
Well,
Francisco.
the use
which
of
kind of went over my head. It's like, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I want to talk about art that we work on, but yeah. Okay.
Well, the tie was into Berlin, because the film festival is Berlin and beyond.
Okay, and this
So-
one reminded you of, okay, I see.
So
But
the
materials-
glass dome, and then the glass dome was the inspiration, but I could have used any material
Okay.
that was appropriate.
Okay.
Well, I saw that, and I use, most of the time, I use materials that are not art materials. Stuff I
right,
find,
right.
I
Because
use.
because you say I'm not on that straight and narrow path that the artists do when they go and get their art degrees from the art schools. I am a renegade artist.
Well, actually,
and
there's
I'm an
a-
engineer, and I'm going to
No.
use engineering materials.
There's something very interesting. Sol DeWitt actually made a point of it, saying once that you just have to unlearn what you have learned in school when you really start becoming or working as an artist. You do something that's inside you, right? So don't do what anybody else is telling you. Do what is inside you and articulate that.
Okay.
And that's just, I never had the disadvantage of going to art school because I didn't have to unlearn any of this stuff.
Advantage. Okay, well, that's all right. Well, I have to say that I went to art school and then I dropped out for various reasons, and I always thought that going to art school I had to go to a school that was only art, because being a young person you think differently. You know, focusing on art and then saying, okay, the bell rung, I got to go now to English, and then I'm going to go to mathematics, and I wanted to do art at the time when I was a young college girl. If I was going to start working in art, you know how artists are, you're in it and you can't leave. You're just there, and you're there for 10 hours or maybe 5. It's certainly not an hour and a half or an hour. Ding, ding. That's just horrible. So anyway, I didn't have the ability to go to art school because I just have the ability to turn on and turn off. So, and let's see. So I asked you when you started to become an artist, and you've known that. And I asked you, and you told me this. And oh, I'm sorry, we're talking about. I lost.
image.
Sorry, studio audience. We've got a nice studio audience today. Anyway, we were talking about the the JPEGs you sent in, the electronic images, and we have your Berlin-inspired piece, which is very beautiful. Thank you for sending that to me. And now we all got to see it. And Jill sent 2 pieces, which we put into one image for our lovely cameras, because they're taller than they are wider. So in order to fit on the screen, I put them side by side. And they're both in the same show that this one was made for, which is your most recent show, which was in December?
November 2006.
November 2006, okay. And this show was called
What did we call this one?
Jill's Art of Jill,
Oh,
2006.
A Life in Painting, I believe.
A
was-
Life in Painting, could
yes,
be.
Yes.
So these 2 are, you've got one of a woman bending over taking a photo of children
Yes.
at the beach, and you've got another one of
3
women, 3 figures dancing, and they're abstracted, very abstracted.
Yes.
And they were both purchased, they were snapped up, I think the night of your show, the night of your
Yes, they
opening.
were.
Yeah. So, yes, we've got Jane and Jerry Schwartz bought the Jazz Dancers. and
Jazz
they're-
Trio, that's
Jazz
on the-
Trio,
on the
and
right.
they're local to Palo Alto. And the other one was purchased by a friend of yours,
Claudia Truesdale.
Claudia Truesdale, and she lives in Menlo? Menlo?
No, Palo Alto.
Palo Alto also,
Yeah.
okay. So these, now obviously you didn't have 3 models in Edward's class, and you certainly
No.
didn't have a woman and 3 children in Edward's class either.
No.
So these were from other inspirational pieces.
The one on the right, which is the Jazz Trio, is actually 3 of the same figure.
Oh, okay.
In Edward's drawing class, because the models are
Move.
moving and changing, there's plenty of opportunity to actually draw the same model multiple times. And so I had a drawing that was the 3 figures kind of reaching and dancing, and I think the model's name was Jennifer. She was a great dancer.
Was she a black woman? Because
No.
this is black. Okay,
No.
you just use black as a
Yeah.
basis.
And my drawings in Edward's class usually don't have any color. They're just the shape and the movement. So that one I maybe did, about 4 or 5 years ago. And then I pulled out the drawing when I was working on
The
this
drawings,
show.
okay.
Pulled out the drawing, and there was just something about it, the way that this figure was moving and the 3 together. And
You've
then
done 3s before. You've done 3
I
many
do
times,
like to do
actually.
3, yeah. And so usually there's something about the movement of the figures that's happening that suggests the color to me. And because I really wanted you to see the gestures of the figures,
Very strong.
I
colors.
did high contrast, and so the dark areas that would be skin, that's not really skin tone. It's just it's dark because I want it to be dark. It's not of a particular person or people.
Yeah, it just stands out very well.
Yes.
And is the background is a light blue? Is that
A,
right?
a lighter, yes.
Uh-huh,
I do.
yeah.
I do like to do a silhouette so that you get a
Yeah.
really strong edge.
Oh, it could be backlit of anybody, of any,
backlight,
of
yeah.
any origin.
Yeah.
So now the other one is it's very sweet. It's a woman bending over, of taking pictures of children who's playing with sand in the beach. They're building something, right?
Yes.
So, and this is now. I know you spend almost every weekend out at the coast in Half Moon Bay area and Miramar,
Pescadero.
Pescadero.
Yeah.
Oh, you get further south.
yeah.
Okay. So you spend a lot of time out there with your own child and other friends and their
Yes.
children. So this is from those experiences.
Once again, from a sketch, I have a little teeny tiny sketchbook to take with me places like that. I mean, it's my little teeny tiny. And this sketch that I did for this piece, which is called The Photographer, that's the one on the left. I don't know, maybe 10, 15 seconds.
Uh-huh.
I was just doing a series of the woman who's bending down. She's wearing a large straw hat, bending down, taking a photograph of the children as they're playing. And so she has just no awareness that I'm over here watching her.
Yeah.
And watching
It's great
them.
to be an artist like that. You
Yeah.
get a little sketchbook,
Yeah.
cafes,
doing this, and so
sketching people.
and once again, it was this light and feeling of the color of the day. I didn't take notes right then and there. I just had this very quick, simple sketch, and then I just do color mostly from memory and feeling.
Very good. I wanted to ask you all who the first time you've taken. Now, did you ever take any life drawing classes?
I couldn't.
You couldn't.
I couldn't draw anybody
You're
live
too
to save
shy,
my life.
or you just?
No, I'm not shy at all. I just don't have the ability to draw.
Oh, I don't believe that.
No,
Anybody
I
can
do
draw.
technical drawings. I was trained that way.
I do technical drawings. I can,
So
I
when you
can
draw, if you don't know
And
how
I
to
really
draw,
don't have any interest in it.
I have to tell you
That's
this.
probably even a stronger argument.
Well, okay. Well, if you don't have interest in it, then you don't want to go. But if you don't know how to draw muscles and so on, you can just scribble.
Yeah.
You do, they look like a wire. And that's what you do for fast drawings anyway. You just scribble it in. You could try that.
You could actually work in wire.
Wire.
You could
Well,
work in wire.
actually, there's a new body of work I'm working on today, which is way more painterly. But it actually is just very large geometric figures that I then use. I paint them with liquid iron. And then I treat them with acid and provide different treatments.
I love that accent of yours.
To
Look at
get-
iron.
I know.
Look at iron.
I
irony of
worked
it
the whole
all.
life
The
on that
irony.
accent, and I'm going to lose it. So I'm more interested in then creating surface textures than there's so many good painters that do something like this. You know, I have a very unique style, and I maintain
Yes,
that.
you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you don't need. It's life drawing is sometimes people use it to break out of if they're stuck sometimes. Or if they're frozen, either stuck in doing the same thing, or if they're frozen, because you have to move.
Yeah.
You have to do it, and then 2 minutes it's over, and 5 minutes it's over, and it's just, and you just throw it away. So it's nothing to keep. It's not even that kind of a thing that you do for posterity. You do it as an exercise. It's almost like going to jumping rope, or
Yeah, I do
or
something very
stretching.
similar. I actually cut branches like this and tie them together.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding.
But that's a good idea. I don't see.
All right. So you invited us over one time, and then I thought, I don't think I want to go over this. Okay, this reminded me of some other night we had on here on the.
Oh.
Yeah. The stabbing and cutting up of the canvas in the backyard. Okay. So, do you remember that one?
Yes, I
No,
do.
I don't want to go. Private thing here. It's not good for this. Okay, so also, but you've done life drawings forever, right? I mean, you've been doing life drawing for decades.
Yes.
Decades. Yeah, me too. So, all right. So let's see what I want to talk about here. We've got this. Where's the drawing here? Here, see now, people draw. This is what artists just do. They just draw when they're here. We've got artists in the studio here. They're drawing on any paper that's around when they're just having nothing to do. Okay, these are my notes. Okay, what else do I want to talk? We talked about many things. We want to talk about many things, like external validation. Okay, external validation of being an artist. We wanted to talk about studios. What kind of studios we have. What kind of things give us our creative sparks. So, creative sparks. What sparks your creativity?
About anything.
Anything.
A
The fallen
crack.
leaf.
No, a crack in the asphalt.
Uh-huh.
Actually, there is a way when you go from downtown Half Moon Bay north.
Okay.
There is this path that is fixed with white kind of tar, and so they just fix the cracks. And whenever I go there, I sketch them
Oh,
because
okay.
they will come back to me. Rusty wire, a fallen leaf. I talked a little earlier about anything. Especially you mentioned New York a little earlier. When I go to New York, I come back. I mean, it's just I'm so inspired.
Filled with all
And
sorts
I
of
never
images.
know where it ends up. It starts something, and
Just sort of collect images in your mind and on paper.
yeah, and then I typically sit down, I sketch something out. That is then for me the starting point of actually developing a piece. Very, very seldom actually do I produce anything that is close to what I sketched out initially. But it's again, it's the start of a journey. And so what does really trigger something?
Anything that catches you.
Yeah.
Do you ever come up with poetic image? I mean, when I paint or when I see things, sometimes I come up with a poetry, sort of a poetic feeling about it, where it's not even something as mundane as a phrase. It's that you would just speak on the phone or to somebody at lunch. It's more of a poetic thing. So I write. Sometimes I write a very short poem after I've finished writing a painting or doing a painting. I mean. And why I'm bringing this up is for a couple of reasons. One, because it's part of my creative process. But when you talked about the leaf, the fallen leaf, there's a poem that I really enjoy by a poet, who, of course, by a poet, who says, "Fallen leaves are admired by us. Who admires the dying, fallen humans, people? When we fall and we're dying and we're degrading, is that beautiful to anything, anybody out there?"
I think worms.
Do you think they admire our beauty, though?
No, they're just happy to have
Have you
us.
ever seen an old couple? They have obviously been together for a long time. They know each other in and out, and they walk down the street, and you see the interaction, which is almost instinct.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing more beautiful than that. Actually, when my very first show, I called Visual Mantras, and one of the things that I wrote in my artist statement was that a leaf like this reminds us that in our youth-driven culture, not just something young and pretty is worthwhile and is beautiful. There is beautiful in anything.
That's a beautiful way to wrap up this talk.
There we go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for coming tonight, Jill Andre and Werner Glinke. Did I say it right?
You did?
I did. Thank you very
You
much.
practiced long enough?
This is Sola, our talk art. And we talked art tonight. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
So you're welcome. And I'm so glad you brought this beautiful art.
Yes, you are.
I'm